So the title of this presentation is The Human Advantage, Online Teaching and Learning in the Age of AI. AI is not the central focus of this presentation, but I think it's a really important context. And obviously it's something that we are all thinking about and it's on everyone's mind. So let's go ahead and listen to a little story. I want to start with a story. This is a story from my personal life, and I am intentionally doing this. I'm intentionally starting with my personal narrative because I believe personal narratives are essential to every single one of us in terms of our teaching practice and making changes in our teaching practice. This story goes back to September 2019. It was September before COVID. I was preparing to go to my 30th high school reunion, which I didn't want to do. I was very reluctant to go. I was very reluctant to get tickets. I was being nudged by, the few people that I stay in touch with from high school to go. And I finally said, okay, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to push myself. I'm going to go. But again, very reluctant along the way. And as the day got closer, I got more and more nervous, found myself trying to battle that self-talk and convince myself to go. Got myself there that night, of course, with, a couple of people with me so that I was not feeling too socially awkward. And I arrived at the venue and I walked up to the table where the badges were laid to grab my badge with my name on it. And there was a man next to me. And he was grabbing his badge at the same time. And he said, "Oh, hi, Michelle." And I looked up to him and I looked at his face, and it took me a little while. And I did look at his badge and I said, "Oh, I remember you. We had English together in Mrs. Burrows' class." And he said, "Oh, that's right." And so we took a minute. We talked a little bit about English and some of the things we've been up to since high school. And we went our separate ways. So the night was coming to a close, and people were starting to say goodbye, and he came back up to me. And he came up to me when I was kind of alone, walking from one place to another, and he said, "Do you have just a minute?" And I said, "Sure, what's up? Did you have a good time?" And he said, "I just want you to know that you are the only person here tonight who remembered me." And the two of us leaned in and got teary-eyed and really talked about high school and all the things that were hard for us. And that moment, I don't know, it did something inside of me. It changed me forever. It made me think differently about so many things. That morning, I remember waking up and thinking about that whole night and my own experiences and thinking about how nervous I was. And everyone I talked to that night remembered me. I couldn't imagine what it must have felt like for him. It was absolutely heartbreaking. But in addition to that, it made me think about other things. It made me think about the one Black student who showed up to the reunion and what that must have felt like for him. It made me think about the former student, friend, colleague, whatever you want to call him, who announced that he was alcoholic, and that's why he was a recovering alcoholic, and that's why he was not partaking in the festivities and drinking beer with his buddies that night. It made me think very differently, and it also made me recognize my privileges as opposed to my struggles, which is what I was very much steeped in. And I've taken that with me into teaching. At that very moment when that happened was right when I was starting this Humanizing Online STEM project that Joy alluded to. And it was something that really played a role in how I thought about this concept of humanizing with my project team. It wasn't just me, and how we approached the research, and it stayed a part of this thread. And I want to share that with you because there's a lot from that we need to recognize. This question, do I matter here? It's something that all of us look for. It's an answer that we seek at every moment of our lives. Every room we walk into, every website we click on, every show that we watch, every book that we read, we look for cues to make us feel like we matter in this context. And the answer to that question isn't one that we consciously answer, but it is one that we unconsciously answer based on unconsciously scanning our environment and looking for cues that tell us if we matter or if we don't. And the answer to that question determines whether or not we stick around. And if we do stick around and we feel like we don't matter, you can imagine what kind of experience that is and how it literally blocks your ability to be motivated and to perform to your full potential. We as humans are connected. We're wired for connection. It's a physiological fact. We've known this for decades and decades about being humans. It motivates and enables us. But we live in a culture that is actually stifling our basic needs. We know from research that loneliness is on the rise in the United States. And, loneliness has always been a common experience in terms of being a human. But we know now that 58% of US adults are lonely, according to studies. And that number was higher during COVID, but it hasn't gone down much since COVID. We also know that not all people are impacted the same. And I see the question, how are we defining lonely? If you want to know the answer to that, you can actually look up a loneliness measure that is used in the research by Cigna. I don't have all those measures committed to memory. But we know that our disproportionately impacted groups are transgender and gender diverse individuals, Hispanic, Black, and young adults, ages 18 to 24. Interestingly, 79% of young people compared to 41% of those 66 and older, and low-income individuals. And loneliness is an interesting thing because it used to be more common as people got older, not as they were younger. Loneliness used to be correlated with actually being physically alone. But the kind of loneliness that we are experiencing today in this country is actually feeling lonely when we are with other people. That's what's on the rise more than anything else. I should also say this was, something that as I was putting this together, I was thinking about some of the data around LGBTQ individuals and how today, with the growing contrast with our political dichotomy in our country, we have many people who come out to certain family members and not others. So imagine that, right? Imagine existing within your own family without having that sense of connection and acceptance. Now, there's also research that shows loneliness increases job satisfaction and it decreases productivity at work. It increases the odds of dying early by 45%. Some research conducted by Julie Santos from Yale, who, by the way, also leads the Happiness Lab podcast. If you've never heard it, it's fantastic. She found that in her research, loneliness is like smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So why is this happening? Some of the reasons point to COVID. Some of the reasons point to technology, right? Those are commonly cited reasons. And influencers of loneliness. And while that is certainly true, we have to think about technology, mobile phones, social media, and recognize that those just aren't these neutral things that emerge out of nowhere. They emerge out of a culture. And we have cultural values that really influence us as well, particularly rugged individualism, a deep-seated value in the United States that really, in our dominant culture in the United States, that encourages us to stand out from the crowd, right? And to be better, to work harder. And it also fosters a real competitiveness amongst people, a competition that is opposite from coming together and connecting. And this brings us to our conversation about belonging. Belonging is central to the research with regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We know that students who belong, who experience belonging in college, are more likely to complete a class, they're more likely to move to the next year in college, and they're more likely to earn a degree. We also know that students with one or more minoritized social identities are less likely to experience belonging. And belonging is not the same as fitting in. Belonging is being accepted for your true, authentic self. Belonging is the science of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Whoops, I missed something here. I wanted to point out a little bit more about fitting in. So belonging is being accepted for your true, authentic self. Fitting in is having to change who you are. And fitting in is problematic because fitting in is toxic. It's painful. And it's been shown the sense of social rejection in research is shown to activate the same parts of the human brain as physical pain. But we value physical pain and psychological pain differently. And it's generally rendered invisible. And it's something that we have to start seeing and thinking about because it's influencing who succeeds in our classes. As I mentioned earlier, so much of what we're talking about here today happens at an unconscious level in the brain. We're generally unaware of the complex process that happens every second. I have a quote here by Daniel Goleman, who's the author of Social Intelligence that I find really compelling. He says, "We're designed for sociability, constantly engaged in what he calls a neural ballet that connects us brain to brain with those around us. Our reactions to others and theirs to us have a far-reaching biological impact, sending out cascades of hormones that regulate everything from our hearts to our immune systems, making good relationships act like vitamins and bad relationships like poisons." So I'm gonna let that resonate for a second. Now, when we enter a situation, a social context, the scanning is pretty fascinating what happens in the human brain. If we're enter an environment where we see micro or where we experience micro or macro aggressions, that's a sign, that triggers the sense of psychological unsafety. Okay, that's pretty clear. And if we enter a place that has micro affirmations or macro affirmations, things that are welcoming and supportive, it's pretty clear that, it's at least a place where we're going to stick around a little bit longer and keep giving it a try. What's fascinating to me was learning this, that if there are no cues, if you enter an environment and there are no cues that the human brain scans for, the human brain stays on its most highest alert, higher than if it's red. Okay, so what I want you to think about is when you teach online, and I teach asynchronously online, and generally this theory is applied to asynchronous online, but I think we need to think about it with synchronous online classes too. What are those cues? And we can think about, again, human nature. What is it that the brain is wired for? Well, when you walk in a room, share with me in the chat, what is it that would cue you that this is a welcoming place? Okay, great. Trans flags. Thank you, October. Food, smiles, eye contact, smile, hello, being greeted. Yes, yes, all of these things. And there isn't just one. There is by no means just one. If someone else looks like me, that's a big one that floats up to the top of research. When it comes to what the human brain is wired for, the first level that we seek out is humans. We look for smiles, we look for the nonverbal cues, as well as the people who look like us or cues that signal that who we represent welcomes us into the space. And so with that, we have moved forward with this real focus on micro affirmations, which comes from the work of Dr. Mika Estrada. There's an article linked at the bottom of the page, and she's been writing about the role of kindness and community in increasing STEM career pathways for more diverse students. And we think about these micro affirmations as kindness cues of social inclusion. And with that, we've moved forward and we've developed a model that we call humanized online teaching. I know this humanizing is being used in lots of different contexts, and by no means do we have claim over it. But when I'm using it here, I just want to point out that I am referring to a specific approach. We were granted $2 million in grant funds from the California Education Learning Lab over 5 years. We are 4 years into that 5-year course. And our focus has been on closing racial equity gaps in online undergraduate STEM courses through professional development. We've rolled this out across California public higher ed in the CCC, CSU, and UC, but UC is actually our partner for the research portion, not the professional development portion. And our professional development is a Humanizing Online STEM Academy, which is 6 weeks long. It's online and it's asynchronous in Canvas, grounded in culturally responsive teaching and psychologically inclusive course design. And the research that's come out of our project has linked the humanized online classes to high rates of belonging online, with greater increases in belonging for students from racially minoritized groups. So we did a test at the start of the class and a test at the end, and we saw greater increases in belonging for students from minoritized racial groups, which is great because we know that from the research, racially minoritized students start with lower rates of belonging. So it makes sense that if it's working, we'd be seeing greater increases. We're also seeing equitable changes in faculty mindsets, awareness of student differences, more awareness in the role that teaching plays in achieving equity. So kind of the shift from thinking about it as the students, it's the students that need to figure it out, but recognizing that what we do as teachers really influences who succeeds, as well as teaching behaviors, including flexibility and positioning oneself as intentionally positioning oneself as approachable online, which sometimes we can have the most approachable instructor, but if you don't have that approachable presence online, then it doesn't convey to students. Now, an important part of this, and Corinne, I want to really thank you for your comments and recognize that this is certainly something that needs to be more inclusive of neurodiverse people. I agree with you. In fact, if you want to work with me on that, I would be more than happy to have that conversation. Not that I want to put that burden on you, but I would love to learn more. So thank you. So some of the cognitive differences that do fall into the research that we're leveraging for the Academy, and neurodiversity is not part of the research, unfortunately, but I hope that we are getting there, include the notion of dependent learners and independent learners. Dependent learners, and you have both in every single class that you teach. Dependent learners are students who are unsure about how to tackle a new task, need scaffolding to complete tasks, and will sit passively and wait if stuck until the teacher intervenes. And independent learners possess the cognitive strategies for getting unstuck. attempt new tasks without scaffolds, and have learned how to retrieve information from long-term memory. And here's the fascinating thing. Every single human starts as a dependent learner. And there's only one way to move to an independent learner. It's through cognitive struggle. It's through intellectual struggle. It's by having teachers reach out and challenge students. And when we think about who gets those opportunities in K-12, there's a privilege there. And there are a lot of inequities. And we know from the research of Luke Wood, Dr. Luke Wood, for example, who's now the president at Sacramento State, that Black students, particularly males, but also females, are underrepresented in gifted and talented programs by as early as second grade, and overrepresented in disciplinary programs. So these biases trickle down and have lasting impacts on the students who come into our classes. The students we teach are also culturally diverse, as we know, and a theory that has been very helpful in understanding these cultural differences are low context or individualistic cultures, and high context or collectivist cultures. So I'm kind of morphing these two archetypes in together. These exist on a spectrum. They're not buckets. The same is true with the preceding slide, but low context cultures have some similarities and themes in amongst their cultural values. Context, or the situation, people, nonverbal elements of a communication, is less important than words. If we go over to high collectivist cultures, it's the opposite. So things like the nonverbal elements, like the welcoming cues that we just talked about, that are these micro affirmations and these social cues of inclusion, those are also more valued amongst students from high context cultures. In low context culture, identity is rooted in oneself and one's own accomplishments, as opposed to in high context and collectivist cultures, identity is rooted in groups. And then we also see differences amongst competition being more valued on to the left side of the spectrum, whereas cooperation is more valued on the right side. The left side, we see efficiency and speed. The right side, we see accuracy and depth of understanding. On the left side, we see that relationships can start or tend to start and end more quickly. Whereas in collectivist cultures, relationships are more likely to evolve over time, anchored in mutual respect. So the point here is, if we're teaching to one end of this spectrum and one end of this spectrum, and I'm not correlating cultures directly with either of those types of slides. I'm just saying these are differences that we need to be inclusive of in our teaching and learning context to ensure that everybody is supported. And these are things that are contributing to all kinds of gaps in terms of who succeeds and who doesn't. So relationships are key to supporting groups of culturally and cognitively diverse students. Okay, so that's the premise here that underlies what we're talking about. And not all relationships are the same. So I want to unpack that and link it back to this idea of cognitive diversity and cultural diversity. On the screen here, you actually see two types of relationships. So it may feel a little far-fetched, but let me explain what I mean by that. On the left side, we see a hockey player, right, who's protecting a goal. And we see a hockey stick coming in. I know there's not really a person represented there, but there's a person holding that hockey stick. So those two people are having an interaction here. It is some kind of relationship, right? Those two people are not on the same team, right? It's the goalie's job to keep the puck out of the goal. They're not on the same team. Now, on the right side, we see something very different happening. We see two people standing side by side looking out onto the field. And we see the person on the right pointing. Appears to be maybe some kind of coach, right? and the person on the left who appears to be perhaps a player on the coach's team. They're both looking out to the same place, and the coach is guiding, giving supportive tips. These two are on the same team. These two have the same goal. On the left is an example of positional authority. He's a goalie, and he has his authority because he's the goalie, right? The left is relational authority. Now we see a coach there who's still in a position of authority, but the authority comes through the relationship, the listening to the tips, the listening to the, what should I do? How can I improve my game? Comes through this relationship. There's a trust that is established there. They're both authority types. And that relationship on the right is the type of relationship that collectivist cultures really thrive in, or really value, I should say. We're going to go deeper with that. Trust is at the foundation of a positive relationship. A metaphor that I've heard used by Brené Brown, who I love, is a marble jar for trust. Think of like a child, a behavioral marble jar, right? So a child does something good, we put a marble in the jar, the marbles accumulate, and over time, the marble jar fills and there's some kind of award or recognition for good behavior. Trust operates that same way. It happens in small increments over time. There's a really great quote that I'm going to try to read to you from memory by Charles Feltman, who is the author of The Thin Book of Trust. This is how he defines trust. He says trust is the willingness to take something important to you and make it vulnerable to another person. Say that again. Taking something that is important to you and making it vulnerable to another person. The willingness to do that is what trust is. Now, when I heard that definition, I started applying it to teaching and thinking about how we expect trust from our students, right? From the very outset, for the most part. If we have a statement in our syllabus that says, reach out for help if you need it, that's the right thing to say. But it privileges students who are coming into a class with trust established. And many of our students don't have that trust because of the experience, that the traumas that they're bringing with them from their past educational experiences. Some of them don't even have marble jars anymore. And so that is where the onus is on us to be thinking about how to intentionally build that trust. And this is where these pieces start to come together, right? The cues that get read coming into an asynchronous online class. What are they? What are those cues? So with regards to trust as the foundation, there is a particular type of pedagogy that we use in the Humanizing Online STEM Academy. It's called warm demander pedagogy. And it starts with trust. On top of that, we build relationships with students by getting to know them as real people and understand what experiences they're willing to share with us, giving them opportunities to share and trusting us with that sharing, and holding all students to high standards. Now, often what happens in higher education is that, you can take your hand on the screen and kind of cover up the bottom two. Oftentimes, what can happen in traditional college teaching is that we go straight to the high standards. I'm not saying high standards aren't important. In fact, they're critical because we need to get all students through that cognitive, intellectual struggle, right, to advance to independent learners. But doing that has to be done with trust first and getting to know students, and then we build on top of that to really push and challenge students. And this is where I want every one of you to draw upon your own personal narratives. Take some time later today when you have a clear mind. Think about teachers in your past. What are the characteristics that those teachers have had? What are those characteristics? From the work that I've done, from the surveys that I've conducted with groups just like yours, the number one responses are kind and caring. Kind and caring. And so, again, how is it that we go about challenging students and having them, holding them all to high standards? It's very intentional. What this is known as I said earlier, is warm demander pedagogy, and it's a type of culturally responsive pedagogy. This here comes from the work of Judith Kleinfeld, who did research with Native Alaskan students in the 1970s. And it's also the basis of much of the culture responsive work that came in decades after this. And so if you're thinking about other people like Lori Ladson Billings, Geneva Gay, you'll see many of this information overlap in their work as well. So competencies of a warm demander are the ability to create a climate of emotional warmth that dissipates students' fears and fills their expectations of highly personalized relationships. The ability to express concern for students, not by passive sympathy, but by expecting a high quality of academic work and really pushing students to achieve that. But it's done through a very particular manner. It's done, we use a framework for feedback in the Humanizing Academy called WISE feedback, which also comes from research. And it has very particular elements that let me just back up a little bit. It starts with framing your feedback with a high expectation statement, which for students who are used to getting critical feedback and have done so in discriminatory settings, the assumption gets built. It's human nature to have that assumption be kind of the first assumption be, well, you're saying that because of my identity. And so by starting with high standards, pointing to, this is a really hard concept. Lots of students struggle with this. I struggled with this in school too, saying something like that at the start of feedback, and then following that up with an affirmation of ability. I know you can do this. You've done hard stuff earlier in this class. And then actionable feedback about how to get from where a student is to where they need to go next. Those three components increase the likelihood of students accepting that critical feedback and applying it to their work. And that's a test that was actually done comparing white college students to Black college students. So Black college students were more likely, I don't remember the exact percentage, but it was significantly more likely to apply that critical feedback when that type of WISE feedback was utilized. So again, this is the warm demander pedagogy, and I just have some of the folks, the wonderful scholars that have done similar work noted at the bottom. I think it's really important to recognize that work, which so rarely gets included in higher education. So in the Humanizing Academy, we think about, or I should say in the Humanized Online Teaching model, we think about weeks 0 and 1 as high opportunity zones. And we start with something called the liquid syllabus, which some of you I think have probably heard of. I know that you have your own approach to getting your orientation letters that you use at College of the Canyons to get in touch with students in advance. I think that's awesome. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the liquid syllabus because it might be something that you want to pull some ideas from and weave into the orientation letters that you're already using. Or maybe it's something that you want to create on your own and link to an orientation letter. The liquid syllabus pulls in other research that I haven't mentioned, research that is called thin slices, which when I heard about this, I thought, oh my gosh, why do we not know about this? Why is this not central to what we do with online teaching? There is research that shows that approachability is the most desired teaching characteristic amongst undergraduate STEM students. So we know that from research. And we also know that brief video clips hold the potential to shape students' first impressions and build trust. And we know that from this Thin Slices research that goes back to the 1990s by a researcher named Ambati. And in her work, she had students view 6-second video clips with no sound before a class started, and had those individuals who viewed the video clips respond to a measure that evaluated different aspects of that instructor. And there's a certain word for it. I'm forgetting what the macro traits. There it is. Things like likability, things like trust, that sort of things, those sorts of things, which you think, well, how could you do that in 6 seconds with no sound? But then she compared those to the surveys of students who actually took a whole class with that instructor, and the results were remarkably similar. So it's interesting. Again, I know there's a lot to unpack there, a lot to critique, a lot to say but this, but that, but still the use of brief video clips before students start your class is a compelling way to share yourself and to start building that psychological safety with your students. So this is one of these YouTube clips that I really want to share. So Joy, do you want me to kind of turn it over to you now? It's a 2-minute clip.
Hi, Michelle. I'm going to share my screen in just a second.
Thank you. Sorry for the clunkiness. I've done this so many times. I've never had this problem.
The first step in cultivating belonging in your online class is ensuring all students feel welcomed. Past experiences leave many students distrusting their classes. Feeling psychologically unsafe triggers reactions in the brain that causes a person to scan their environment for cues of inclusion. Your students' perceptions of you and your online class are shaped within their first few clicks. It's important that they know there is a real person on the other side of the screen who cares about their learning. Weeks 0 and 1 of an online class are a high opportunity zone for cultivating a sense of belonging. The Liquid Syllabus supports your students by providing a welcoming first step before your class even starts. Over the coming weeks, you'll develop a single public web page that will welcome all of your students and begin to establish a relationship with them based on trust. While your Liquid Syllabus may end up including multiple pages, in the Academy you'll only develop your home page, the one page your students will see before your class starts.
Hello, students. Professor Yates here. I'm out here in Ventura, California. I made it out here just in time for the sunset. And you can see behind me, those are islands. Those are the Channel Islands. I recommend it to go there if you haven't, at least for a day trip. You have to, at least once in your life. Check it off the box. But I'm out here in nature, one of my favorite places to be. I will often come here.
Your Liquid Syllabus will send the cue, "You got this," and I'm here to support you. Ready to get started? Awesome. Let's do it.
Michelle, you're muted.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to navigate back over here. Okay, so that's a video that we actually show folks in the Academy. There we go. And the point here is that before you send a welcome email, which is a practice, it's a really common, effective practice for students, right? But when you send a welcome email, and if it says, click here to view whatever it is that you want your students to view, and they're taken to a login screen. That's not a very welcoming view, is it? In fact, that is actually a barrier to some students because some students might not know how to log in yet. And they might think, oh, I'll do that later. I'll figure it out later. So that's a missed opportunity. It also doesn't take them to something that is going to render on a smartphone that looks like this, right? A lot of the content we create in Word and PDFs, I have this recognition about my own syllabus, which was beautiful, but it was looking like this on phones. And I thought, that's not very cool. So a liquid syllabus, if it's created with a website tool like Google Sites, which is the tool that we encourage faculty to use because it does support accessibility very well. It takes them right to the students or the instructor's video, right? Those welcoming cues are right there. And we also really encourage faculty to make something that reflects them. Be your own authentic self. This is something in higher education that faculty are often not cued to do. It's like this unwritten word that we're not supposed to be our real selves. And so faculty also come out of the academy and they have 8 elements that they develop. And the joy and the pride that they feel with their liquid syllabus is actually, it's striking. I really believe that faculty are ready and just craving to create things that they feel proud of. And so there's kind of a little bit of a spark, that happens on the faculty side too. Now I am this might be a little bit tricky, but this is authenticity. And as we're getting into the age of AI, I'm going to pass this back to you, Joy. I'm going to prompt you through this sharing. If you can open up this slide. As we are now here, I shouldn't say getting into, we're in the era of AI. And, there are a lot of questions, and I know that right now there's a lot of focus, right, on, what are we going to do with our assignments and assessments, and what is it that students should be learning in college, and what do the jobs look like that we're preparing many of our students for? All really good questions. There are also questions emerging about what's the role of an instructor in online classes. Can we have AI take that over? So I want you, Joy, first of all, to click on example 1. And we're going to play about, scroll down a little bit. That video at the top is what you're going to play. So go ahead and play that just for about 15 seconds or so. This is me. This is my liquid syllabus.
Hey there, I'm Michelle Pacansky-Brock. Thanks for taking a few moments to check out our liquid syllabus and for watching this video. I want you to know just a few things about me before we get started with the class and start learning together. First of all, I am...
Okay, you can pause that. Okay, so now let's go back to the slides. They should be in another tab if they open the way mine open. Oh, there we go. Okay, so now click on example 2, and I want to see if you can make out what's going on differently with this video.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Pacansky-Brock. Thanks for taking a few moments to check out our liquid syllabus and for watching this video. I want you to know just a few things about me before we get started with the class and start learning together. First of all, I am a teacher.
Okay, so can anyone tell? Yeah, so I made that video by uploading a photograph of myself and my audio, and it animated my mouth. But you know what else it did? It took out so many of my nonverbal cues. And I don't know if you could see that or not, but like the smile obviously is different because it's not my mouth. The eyes are more static. It took out the warmth. Exactly. It took out the warmth. And it didn't, it's interesting that you're saying it sounded very flat, Cindy, because the audio, well, actually they may have taken some of the nuance out of the audio too. So but I wonder if it's because of the flatness of the nonverbal that the audio also comes across as flatter. So here's one more that I want Joy to play for us. And this one I want you to play for a little bit longer, Joy. Listen to my words too, of course.
Hi there. I'm Michelle Pacansky-Brock. Thanks for taking a few moments to check out our liquid syllabus and for watching this video. I want you to know just a few things about me before we get started with the class and start learning together.
Keep playing.
First of all, I am a teacher at heart. I love to teach and I really love to teach online. So I want to be sure that you know I'm here because this is something I really enjoy doing. I also want you to know that I understand it's hard to be a student and it's especially hard now to be a student. I recognize that and I want you to understand that I'm doing my very, very best to create.
But you can see, right? Well, obviously, like how can AI build trust? I mean, that whole part of teaching and learning gets ripped out, right? If we start going down that road. And so I want to implore upon you to recognize that your human authenticity, the quirkiness that you bring, everything about you is what makes you stand out right now. And it's so important to embrace that. And it's so important to bring it into your classes because our students also need it more now than ever. And you do too. Joy, why don't you go back to the slide and I'll just have you keep clicking. I think it might be easier to do that from here. Thank you. So we've got 8 elements for humanizing, and you can actually click a few more times. There's a few builds on here. Yeah, keep clicking. I'll tell you when to stop. Sorry, you went back. Right there. So I don't have time to get into all of these, but we do have 8 elements of humanized online teaching. You see on the bottom there, it says warm, wise feedback. So I talked about the wise feedback model, and it's warm because we encourage faculty, not every time, but from time to time, use video or voice in their feedback because delivering critical feedback also resonates differently, right? It's got those cues in there. And so if a student is kind of coming into a situation where they've already experienced so many negative experiences previously, and they're reading words on a screen, they're much more likely to read things in a context that is very negative. And even if it's, not the way that it's intended to come across. So if we look from left to right, we have the liquid syllabus. Students come on in, they click on in Canvas, and they view a humanized homepage. There's a getting to know you survey, which we have a version of in the Canvas Commons. It allows an opportunity for an instructor to collect information from students and, ask them questions like not only what's your pronoun, but also how do you pronounce your name? Can you record it for me or write it phonetically? Other things like what are your aspirations in life? Getting to understand where your students are headed after your class and how your class fits into that. 2 questions that I love. In one word, how are you feeling about this class? In one word, how are you feeling about this class? Right there, you'll be able to find your students who kind of fall on the spectrum, and you'll have lots of students who say fine, interested, excited. You're going to have students who say overwhelmed, anxious, uncertain, scared. Those are your students who are the high opportunity students off the bat, and they need your human touch more than the others. So what we like to encourage faculty to do is in the Canvas grades area, turn on the notes column. And if you've never used the notes column, it's usually not there by default, but it's simple and completely transformative. I put little emojis right there in the notes area of the students that I want to kind of give more attention to. So I'll put like a little heart emoji, and that signifies that they're my high opportunity student right off the bat. And they're going to be more likely to get a quick video response from me in response to that survey. A self-affirming icebreaker in week 1, that's our version of something called the values affirmation, which also comes from equity-related research. We see that when students have the opportunity to reflect and the research says write about, but we have students actually share in a flip in video, share about one of their values, it mitigates that threat. And it's actually that starting with a values affirmation is linked with improved academic performance later downstream in a student's academic lifetime. We also have micro lectures and bumper videos, and these are bumper videos in particular are fun little videos that are set to music, if an instructor wants to set them to music, that explains a sticky concept in 2 to 3 minutes. Bumper videos can also be used to introduce modules, assignments, and we have faculty experiment with Adobe Express, which used to be Adobe Spark, for the bumper videos. The Wisdom Wall is a space where students at the end of a class reflect on their learning and share feedback and advice for students coming into the next class. And so that's why I saved it for the end, but it actually gets rolled into the beginning of a class. And that's what the Wisdom Wall is. And it really starts to normalize struggle and enable, especially when it's done in a video space, like something like Flip or VoiceThread, when a student's identities are actually shown, and of course they give consent for this, it's more likely for a student to come in and see or hear another student who looks or sounds like them, and start to build that sense of belonging and self-efficacy. Okay, you can go to the next slide. I'm going to actually, let's play this. So this is one of my bumper videos from my class, and then I want to show you a couple of quick examples from other faculty. So this one's not a sticky concept, but I like to think about this video. I have a series, I call them Let's Get Real videos, and I'm trying to really kind of illuminate different aspects of learning for students and motivate them to continue to do well with the class. So why don't you go ahead and play this real quick one?
I'm going to eat this whole watermelon. Sound like a bad idea? Well, it is if I do it all at once. But if I cut it up into chunks and eat a bowl every day, it's going to be gone in a week. And that's why watermelons are like the modules in our course. Your brain is a lot like your stomach. It works better when it processes things in smaller, frequent amounts.
I didn't mention this brilliant person, but I have to mention her, Zaretta Hammond. If you don't know the work of Zaretta Hammond, she talks about warm demander. She situates within thinking about yourself as an instructional coach, which I'm sure you've seen that. You've sensed that in the early parts of this presentation too. Zaretta Hammond's book, Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain, is fantastic, and I highly recommend it if you haven't read it yet. It's very popular, and a lot of people have, but if you haven't, certainly check it out. She inspires me greatly. So this is a video that I embed on my week 1. Actually, it's week 2. So when they're digging into, the next learning module, which is kind of like the full one, because the first one's a little pared down. So I want them to be thinking about that as they go into the module and think about, okay, how can I break this down and chunk it up and be successful? Okay, can you go to the next slide, please? I'm just going to have you play a little bit of this one. I'll let you know when to stop, but it's a video by Charlie Sakari, who completed the Humanizing Academy. It's an example of one of those bumper videos that illustrates a sticky concept in just a couple of minutes.
Let's do a quick review of chemical bonds.
That's actually not
Chemical
right
bonds
one. Okay.
are the attraction.
I think it jumped ahead.
Hi students, so I'm coming to you from my backyard patio down in the South Bay, and it is quite hot today. In fact, we are just coming out of a heat wave right now.
But we have to be careful with the word heat. Remember, heat is a form of energy transfer, not a form of energy itself. When we say we can feel the heat coming from an object, for instance, from a hot road, we really mean that we feel the energy transferring from the object to us.
Stop there, Joy. Thanks. So these videos, I want you to imagine them, the bumper videos, being embedded within content that you're already teaching. So they're like these little videos that kind of help students to go deeper, or maybe not, I shouldn't say deeper, that's not the right word, but to review concepts. They can be lighter ways, different ways of framing information. So when they're written out in text one way, the video could explain them in a different way. And culturally responsive teaching is very much focused on thinking about culture, the culture that a student comes into a class with. Their brain is like a computer, and the culture is like the operating system that helps them process their information. So for some students, right, reading the text, they're going to really engage with that and get it. For other students, to make that information sticky, it can help if visuals are included. It can help if there's more nonverbal communication. It can help if we start to use things like metaphors, visual metaphors. And so those are some of the ways when you think about, you know, like a Canvas page with, or a module with text, as well as with the video, we're building in that culturally responsive teaching piece. I think that's important to point out here. So I've got one more, and I'm going to have you play this next one in full. And I want you to pay attention. It's only 1 minute. Okay, so this is from Trishana Norquist, who teaches biology at Southwestern College.
Let's do a quick review of chemical bonds. Chemical bonds are the attraction molecules have to each other and the various ways they share electrons. Let's take this electron, for example. Their name is blue. In a nonpolar covalent bond, molecules are able to equally share blue. In a polar covalent bond, one molecule will have a greater pull, leading to the unequal sharing of blue. In an ionic bond, one molecule will take blue and keep them all for themselves. In hydrogen bonds, blue is tossed back and forth due to many quick shares. This is what makes water so unique. Thanks to my mini molecules, no stuffies were harmed in the making of this video.
So that video by Trishana, you know, the message to be authentic, be yourself, means something different to everyone. And I know that there are some folks who watch that video and think, I would not feel comfortable bringing my kids into, and that's totally fine, right? She is. In fact, it makes her teaching feel more authentic to herself. And it also, by using the metaphor in the way that she did and sharing her kids, she's really connecting her teaching with her life, but also she's connecting, she's making more of an intentional effort there to connect the content, right, with relatable ideas in the real world. So there's a lot packed in there that's pretty rich when it comes to teaching and supporting learners who are culturally diverse. Okay, let's go to the next slide. We're coming to the end here. This is a video that I'd like to share with you. It's a couple minutes long, and it is showcasing the thoughts from two faculty who completed the academy, Safa Khan from CSU Channel Islands and Sam Abbas from Saddleback College. They both teach chemistry. So let's go ahead and listen to what they have to say.
There's different cultural differences between people who come from what we call the high context versus the low context cultures. What I learned from the class that really was a fundamental shift for me is that to teach to both crowds. And typically the way we're taught in college is with the low context culture, the individualistic culture, that you do this because it's good for you only, right? And then the high context culture is like, this is good for you because it's good for the community, it's good for your family. And you make closer bonds with the students because you treat them like people. You say, okay, who are you? Why are you important? I felt like I had been given permission to be the professor I always wanted to be, to spend more time with people and to have those communications, and not to be that cold, distant professor that is the model that I was raised with, that I knew that I could be that person I wanted to be. So now even in my face-to-face, even though the academy is for online, I have even changed my face-to-face courses.
What has changed is everything. The way I look at my classroom as an arena to welcome all my students without judgment, without making assumptions, without preconceived notions, without implicit biases that I became aware of, some of which I did not recognize I had, made me develop a very keen look at things and look at it from a very different lens.
And I have one more quote on the next slide that I'd like to read.
There's different cultural differences.
Thank you. I know that's a little tricky to navigate. So this is by Bita Nasratieh, who teaches math at Foothill College. And she wrote this as she was finishing this is actually from an email that she wrote to me. We started a new quarter yesterday, so I decided to use my liquid syllabus and my Getting to Know You survey for the first time. Feeling very unsure about it all, mind you, since I feel like I'm in draft mode. So she was actually just finishing the academy. I was so skeptical, to be honest, that it would make a difference. Yet as I read the one-word responses about how they are feeling about the class and other things they shared, I started to feel so many great emotions. I felt connected. I felt like I could help them more than I ever have. I feel alive. I guess I had no idea how much I needed to humanize myself and the unexpected rewards I would get from it. And that's a pretty magical thing. With that said, folks, it's work. It's not only work in the traditional sense, but it's emotional work. And I want to acknowledge that. And I want to acknowledge that there are a lot of inequities in our system, particularly for those who are listening right now who teach part-time and thinking, oh, that's a lot of work that I'm going to do and not get paid for. And I don't want to just kind of gloss over all of that. We have a system that we're teaching in, and the system has inequities baked into it. And we know how to do this. We know what the right thing is for students. It's a matter of being able to support us towards that goal. And if you could go to the next slide, please. Click one more time. So as we frame AI, talk about it, think about the way that we're framing it. And as we have the conversations about our assignments and those sorts of things, I hope that the ideas from this presentation will be centered when we frame AI. And I hope that we'll start to celebrate and point to our own authentic selves as the human advantage, and recognize that one of the things that we need to do with AI is help faculty take a lot of the administrative and simple, tedious things off their plates. I don't know what those are off the top of my head. I don't have a list of them, but that's where my brain is at with this side, with the way I'm framing AI here. I see a lot of opportunity there. I see a lot of opportunity, but I still feel nervous. I still feel very nervous when I look at what I was able to do with those videos. And by the way, I did that using canva.com for free. I signed up for there's an AI integration into Canva. And I mean, it's right there. Like, I couldn't believe how easy it was. And it was kind of freakishly, at least the first one was better than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, so there's a lot happening here. And again, it's all about how we frame it and what values we keep at the center of the frame as we talk about AI. Could you please click to the next slide, Joy? Thank you. This is a quote from a neuroscientist, a very well-known neuroscientist named Antonio Damasio. We are not thinking machines, we are feeling machines that think. He wrote this a long time ago, long before AI. Well, AI was still around, but anyway, long time ago. And I hope we remember that. So go ahead and click ahead. This is just a slide with some links on it. Our project site is humanizeol.org. I invite you to come check out lots of goodies there if you want to learn more. And one more slide. Yeah, so I was going to stop here and I went a little bit over, but we still have about 20 minutes left to share. So I would just like to ask if you could think about this question. What is resonating with you right now? and share a thought in the chat. For those of you who are there in person, I would love to have you grab the microphone and share.
We've got my.
Scary to share, Michelle.
I know. You know, when we're talking about all this emotional, touchy-feely stuff, it's like, oh, I don't know. Do I want to talk in front of my colleagues, right? So I could share a couple of things.
Michelle.
Do we have someone?
Yeah, this is Cindy Stevens. I teach early childhood at College of the Canyons, and I took a course, and I've interacted a lot with you on @ONE and other courses, and I just want to thank you for being here today and for giving this additional spin, I'm going to call it, in this realm. I do want to say what's resonating for me is I've used a lot of what you're talking about, but I don't use video that much. I use more words, and like I use the survey, and I have them tell me, have them give advice for the students the next semester. And so now I get to take it up a notch, and that is I will start doing more video. Just not thrilled. And this is my last year teaching. I'm retiring at the end of the year.
Oh,
so
wow.
I said that this is my last year, best year. So thanks for giving me the inspiration I need.
All right. Well, thank you for all of your years of service. You said your name was Cindy?
Yes.
Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate that. Bravo to you. Joy, could I ask you to stop screen sharing so that I think we'll get a better view of each other for this part? Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm going to make you folks big on my screen. Oh, look at all of you. I didn't even see that view before. It's so cool. Okay. Yeah. Last year, best year, says Ashley. Thank you for the pronunciation in there, Ashley. That's really helpful. Let's see. We have a couple of shares that I'm just going to read out here. October says the idea of a warm demander, ensuring positive, inclusive, welcoming cues on web pages, videos, etc. Alejandro says, I like those liquid videos and will probably implement them in my courses in the near future. Thank you. And Ashley says, it's being emotional with students is okay. We are not robots. Thank you for that. And Brett says, embracing AI instead of fearing it. Great. And Lauren says, I will definitely implement some quick videos for introductions to the course as well as harder concepts. Charlie says, welcoming attitude is important. And Urvashi says, I would ask my students to give one word description about how they're feeling about the course. All of these little things matter. They make a difference. And Lena says, welcome email with liquid syllabus. Intro sounds great. Scott says, I love to see what I call video snippets, short 1 to 2 minutes I make for each chapter module. Oh, great. I found it to be fun. Yes, it is fun. Okay, so let me turn my attention to those folks who are there in the room. Is there any sharing that wants to happen out there? Hi.
Hi, can you hear me, Cindy Pollock on Zoom?
Oh, okay, yes,
oh,
Cindy. Hi.
I'm sorry, is there somebody else?
Do you mind, Cindy, if we go to the
no,
I'm trying to be
not at all. I didn't see it. I apologize.
I'll come to you next, Cindy, but I see someone in the center of the room here. Hi.
Hi, I wanted to draw attention to how effective your storytelling was in the beginning. And you sort of alluded to Brene Brown, who's also one of my favorites, but what your storytelling did is it made you vulnerable. And as we know from Brene Brown, vulnerability is brave. And when you can be vulnerable, I love that you sort of created the entire atmosphere of, I'm going to be vulnerable with you because I feel safe with you. That means that you should be able to trust me. So you already established trust. And in the way that you told the story. I mean, at first, you know, I was thinking, oh, it's a lecture and I probably should take notes. And then all of a sudden I put my pen down and I was completely captivated and with you on your journey from the beginning to the end of your story. So storytelling is so important. And I just feel that we don't do it enough, but when we do, it makes such a big difference.
You couldn't have said that any better. And I'm so glad you said that, not me. Thank you for that. That was intentional. You know, a lot of thought goes into how to frame all this stuff, but you're right. And we know that being vulnerable is a trust builder. It builds trust with other people. And you know what else happens with storytelling? This is something that I've included in other presentations, but I didn't have in this one. There's a concept in neuroscience called neurocoupling, and it's based on MRI imaging of human brains. And they found that when a person tells a story verbally and another person listens, the same parts of the speaker's brain light up in the listener's brain. So when you have a speaker sharing, you know, an emotional, like vulnerable, like something that's emotionally, you know, has some tension in it, or sadness, or that, you mirror each other's emotions. And when you are in that space with another human, that is also, it builds trust and it starts to make those connections. So thank you for acknowledging that. You framed that all so much like a Brene Brown fan.
I am one, of course.
Yes, her work is amazing. So Cindy, I'm going to turn things over to you now. Thanks for waiting.
Sure. No, and I'm so sorry. I apologize to whoever I interrupted. I can't see you that well in the big group. So Michelle, I too just want to thank you so much. You know, your reputation, you have this amazing reputation through @ONE. I've never had the privilege to take your classes, but so many of my colleagues have. So I just want you to know how excited I was to come today. And I just texted my colleague at Glendale Community College and said, she is amazing, just like you said. I want to be her. I want to grow up and be her. So really, we are so privileged to have you here at COC today. I was going to actually comment on what the speaker just said about storytelling. I really never thought about that. I teach mostly online, but some hybrid. So they get to see me and hear me and interact as well with the hybrid. And what I really liked that I never thought about doing were the videos you did, like outside, on your patio, at the beach. You know, I do these professional videos. I'm a total video feedback person. So most of my feedback is video, all because I feel like the students tell me, Cindy, I feel like we're in a face-to-face class. And that means the world to me. But I've never been vulnerable and just sat outside and talked to them like a person. Right? I talk to them as this teacher. I'm professional. This is, you know, I'm very friendly and warm, but oh my goodness, that just gave me such a great idea. And I wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, good. And that's a simple little tweak. I'm telling you folks, and by the way, Cindy, thank you for all those amazingly kind words you said. I really appreciate that. But I always say that this is the most underutilized ed tech tool out there. Recording with a phone and, you know, making an investment to get a small, cheap tripod that you can put your phone on, which you don't have to do, but it helps because then you can, like, you know, use more nonverbal gestures by moving your hands around and you're not worried about shaking your camera. Finding a quiet place outside. I have a couple of places in my backyard where I regularly record. I just recorded one this morning. A video this morning, or around your neighborhood. You know, if you got your dog in the back of the video, there was research done on asynchronous instructor video, and the research was qualitative. So they were interviewing students about, you know, what did this make a difference? How did comparing the video feedback to the written feedback? And one of the things that came out in the research were students commenting like, well, there's this one video where a door opened in the background and my professor's little boy stuck his head in. Or, you know, the little tiny things that kind of break through that academic sphere into like, oh gosh, that's a real person. those are the things that resonated with students. It like really made an impact as my dog starts scratching at my door. So yeah, it's pretty fascinating, but I agree. I mean, getting outside, you know, putting on your favorite sport team's baseball cap in your video. I mean, little things like that really do make a difference. They make you real. Ooh, we have a suggestion here for a gimbal, a small gimbal on Amazon for handheld videos. Ooh, I'm going to look that up. I'm going to write that down. I don't think I know what a gimbal is. Okay, thanks for that tip. More tips.
Michelle, we've got someone here in person.
Hi.
Hi, Michelle. My name is Kelly Coote. I'm a professor of molecular genetics and biology. And about a year and a half ago, I took the @ONE How to Build a Liquid Syllabus, which I think was more self-paced module, but I took it to heart and I've built liquid syllabi for all of my courses. And one of the things that I took as a lesson from you was to explicitly be able to state, like, what are my expectations of you? And what can you expect from me? And I think these are things that you verbally say like every now and then, or maybe you just, if you're me, you assume that students already know some of these things. However, it relates today is that I incorporated in the end of my syllabus quiz, which of the expectations that you can have for me is most important, or did you respond to the best? So example expectations from me was, you can expect that I will provide an organized course and easy to navigate materials. I will communicate with you within 24 hours if you reach out for help. I will have all graded assignments back to you within a week. And then one of the ones at the very bottom that I just tossed in there thinking I'm going to insult everybody was, if I see someone struggling, I will reach out to you personally to offer help. And so when it came back from 48 students who took that quiz, which of those did you respond to most? And me teaching predominantly pre-med is thinking it's going to be it's really organized or grades are fast. 98% said that you will reach out to us when we are struggling, and that they really hadn't had a professor tell them that before. And it was really impactful. So I wanted to thank you, because you're the person who opened up my mind to that opportunity that I had with my students, and that I got to learn something really valuable from that experience.
That is amazing. You should put a proposal in for the online teaching conference and just share that. I'm not kidding. That's the kind of, those are the kinds of data points that we need that really shift minds. I mean, that is really, really amazing. It reminded me of, I mentioned the work of Dr. Mika Estrada in my presentation. She's the one who writes about the kindness cues in STEM. And she started unpacking the notion of kindness to try to understand, like, well, what is it that we like? What's the criteria? What is it that makes something be an act of kindness? And from what her research has shown is that it's when you do something that you don't have to do. And when you said that, that's what kind of connected in my mind, right? Because you're telling students, like, I'm going to do this. And it's interesting what I have never done what you did there, but I have, and I do say to my students, I'm going to reach out to you if I'm worried about you, if I sense that you need some support. And I want you to know I'm not doing it because I'm coming at you with my finger, and I'm doing it because I want to help you succeed. I'm doing that because we are in this together. And so again, that framing is a very powerful thing. So congratulations to you, and thank you so much for sharing that. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
And thank you for your kind words too. Anything else? I thought maybe what I would do is, what was your name, the person who just shared?
Kelly Coote.
Kelly, I just, as you were speaking, I had the link for my liquid syllabus up here. So I thought I would maybe, since no one else is asking a question or comment right now, I'm just going to pull this back up. But there's my wisdom wall that has comments from students. I intentionally, I think this clip, I started with a student who speaks English as a second or third language. And she talks about how she did well in the class despite that. And so I, was intentional about how I framed those comments there. This is the part that I think you're talking about, Kelly. It's called Our Pact. And this is, again, something that I took from the work of the brilliant Zaretta Hammond. I'll just make it a little bigger on this. Oops, maybe not that big on the screen, but it has a list of what you can expect from me for my students and a list of what I will expect from you. And so setting, again, this is just another simple way that you're setting up this, you're sending the cue that you're going to be a partner in your students' learning, right, from the very beginning. So everything that goes in this liquid syllabus is really intentional about sending all of those kinds of supportive cues. And I just thought I'd share that because that's one that Kelly Rex suggested. And then what I do is at the end, I say, is there anything else you'd like to add to this list on both sides? And when they get into the course, they have to go into a discussion where this pact is pasted again, and they either say they agree or they add something. But generally students don't, my students generally don't add things. But yeah, so that is a little bit more about that.
We have a question. Go ahead and speak up. She'll hear.
How can we access your liquid syllabus so we can see some ideas to use in our own?
What you can do, let me show you. Well, I can put it in the chat, but that doesn't help everyone right now. But oh, here, actually, you can scan that QR code and open it on your phone right now.
Okay.
And this is actually a sample one. It's not my live one. So
Michelle, are you sharing your screen?
Oh.
We can't see it in Zoom.
Well, that's not going to work very well. There you go.
Thank you.
The slides for today that you can access at brokansky.com/COC, they do have a number of links to different liquid syllabus examples, including my own also. So you can get to more than one example. I think it's important to see more than one. So please explore that as well. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your retreat. And I just want to say that I hope you know this, but you are very fortunate to have this amazing team of humans in supporting you. Yeah, great group of people. James, Joy, Chloe, Carol, and I'm sure there's more people, maybe there's not, but those are the ones I know. But just you guys you're fantastic. And I just want to acknowledge that all the hard work that they do in support of you all, because they're so invested in their work. And not all faculty at all colleges have great support with regards to online. So it's good stuff happening there.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, I'm going to sign off.
Okay, thanks, Michelle.
By the way, that website with the slides on it, there's a space at the bottom for comments. So if anything comes up later that you want to share, you can go ahead and just drop them in there and they'll come straight to me. So, and everyone else will see them too, just so you know. Okay, take care. Bye.